Ukraine is quite clearly feeling the heat on the battlefield. Russia, on the face of it, appears to have the upper hand, is pushing ahead. Ukraine's armory is pretty much empty, and senior Ukrainian generals are now saying that strategic retreat of the Ukrainian forces is perhaps the only option in many areas. But what is also interesting to note is that Italy, which holds the rotating presidency of G7, now says that financial sanctions haven't worked against Moscow, and it's now time to perhaps engage in a dialogue with Russia. Our next report explores the reasons for this perhaps realization that has struck Italy. Listen it.
With Moscow seizing the initiative in the Russia-Ukraine war, the Ukrainian forces find themselves outgunned and outnumbered. Kyiv hopes the much-awaited delivery of US weapons will turn the tide in its favor. The West has been arming Ukraine for over 2 years with weapons worth billions, from advanced missiles to millions of rounds of artillery. But beyond the battlefield, a much larger economic warfare is underway. The West has slapped Russian individuals and entities with over 18,700 sanctions. Today, it is the world's most sanctioned nation. But has the economic blockade achieved its goals? The EU now wants to target Russia's liquefied natural gas sector. But the EU wants to keep a small loophole of ship-to-ship transfer. That would mean that Russian gas won't directly land on European ports. Despite the raging war in Ukraine, Europe has bought over 15.6 million metric tons of Russian gas last year. However, Europe realizes the sanctions are not hurting Putin's war chest. Italy, which holds the rotating presidency of G7, says economic sanctions against Russia have failed. It is calling on the West to try harder to negotiate a diplomatic solution with President Putin to end the war in Ukraine. European leaders are also wary that a change of guard in the White House could change its strategy on Russia. Donald Trump says the US can't keep funding a never-ending war. The big question is, does peace have a chance in Ukraine? Bureau Report, WION World is One.
All right, now to give us more perspective on this, we're being joined by Mr. John Irath. He's joining us live from Washington, D.C. Mr. Irath is the Senior Policy Director for the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation. Mr. Irath, let me in fact begin by asking you this. Now, looking at what is unfolding on the battlefield, many Ukrainian commanders have in fact said it quite openly that Ukraine may have to retreat from some of the key positions that it holds. And Italy appears to have been floating an idea that it is time to perhaps negotiate with the Russians. Do you think this idea floated by Italy is likely to find resonance with the other Western partners, predominantly the United States of America?
The key people that the idea would have to find resonance with would be the people of Ukraine. After all, it is the war that they are fighting and not a war that the West is fighting. So the governments of the West should continue to pay attention to what the wishes are of the people in the government of Ukraine. And if they say that it is time to negotiate a solution, if that is possible, and I doubt very much that it is, then that would be the time to do this.
Interesting. Now, and also the fact that there's this military aid package that the American Congress has passed. How much time do you think that military aid package that Congress has passed will have a bearing on the amount of weapons that the Ukrainian soldiers have that they can use in the defense of Ukraine?
It is my understanding that portions of the new package are already on the way to Ukraine. So it should be sooner rather than later before the new equipment will be available to Ukrainian forces on the battlefield.
Now, the European Union is considering to impose more sanctions, this time related to LNG. Why do you think the sanctions that have been imposed by the European Union with respect to the Russian hydrocarbons have not had the desired effect so far?
Because the sanctions to date have been primarily symbolic. They were an expression of discontent from European and other countries with Russia's aggression against Ukraine, but they were not designed to really produce much pain to the Russian people, for the very practical reason that by doing so, it would also create pain for the European people. As democratic governments, European leaders must stay in office, and they need popular support to do this. And so they don't want to increase energy prices or cause fuel shortages, which is what actual sanctions against Russia would do.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Irath, for joining us and getting us that perspective there.
You're welcome.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.